Before we continue our study of the book of Revelation in chapter 9, I would just like to mention that this whole issue of a telescoping view of the relationship of seals, trumpets, and bowls versus the reiteration view of seals, trumpets, and bowls. Reiteration means that the seals tell the story of the 7 years tribulation, and then the trumpets tell the same story again, reiterated again, and then the bowls tell the same story again, versus the telescopic view where the 7th seal contains the 7 trumpets and the 7th trumpet contains the 7 bowls. Well, the simplest way to put that is to say that Revelation 8:1, and when he opened the 7th seal, there was silence in heaven for about half an hour, is followed directly in time, chronological order, by Revelation 8:2. And I saw the 7 angels who stand before God, and 7 trumpets were given to them. There is a passage where 8:1 is followed by 8:2. The 7th seal is immediately followed, no judgments, is followed by the 7 angels which are given 7 trumpets. So if, in other words, if 8:1 is followed directly chronologically by 8:2, that means that the telescopic view of these relationship between seals, trumpets, and bowls is accurate. One other note about trumpets that I'd like to make is that 7 trumpets being blown here is very reminiscent of the 7 trumpets that the priests blew as the army of Israel circled the city of Jericho. And so again, we have Jericho is a little bit after the Exodus, but we have that same Exodus theme appearing in the book of Revelation. The book of Revelation tells about a new Exodus, a greater Exodus. Well, so moving on to Revelation chapter 9. Chapter 9 tells us about trumpets 5 and 6. The 5th trumpet speaks of a judgment of locusts, which are clearly not really regular, normal locusts. And then the 6th trumpet tells about horses with soldiers mounted on them, horses that are clearly not normal horses. So let's look at this. Revelation chapter 9, verse 1. And the 5th angel blew his trumpet, and I saw a star falling from the sky to the earth, and the key to the pit of the abyss was given to him. How can a key be given to a star? Frequently enough in the Bible, stars have personality, and so it seems like this star is some sort of an angelic being. But it's unclear. It's unclear exactly what the nature of this is. But the star receives a key to the pit of the abyss. Revelation chapter 9, verse 2. And he opened the pit of the abyss, and smoke rose out of the pit like smoke from a burning furnace. And the sun and the air were darkened by the smoke of the pit. This is a strange kind of pit. The abyss is opened and smoke comes out of it. This is very strange. Verse 3. And out of the smoke came locusts onto the earth, and to them was given power, a divine passive perhaps, and to them was given power as the scorpions of the earth have power. So like normal scorpions, these locusts receive some kind of power. This is already in itself frightening because scorpions are few and you just have to watch out for them, and you don't put your hand under a rock and you'll be safe from scorpions. But locusts are many and they fly in masses. So locusts being given power like scorpions is already a frightening concept. Well, so verse 4. And it was said to them, a divine passive again, and it was said to them that they must not harm the grass of the earth nor any greenery. So this is different from normal locusts which do harm the grass and the greenery. They must not harm the grass of the earth, nor any greenery, nor any tree, but only the people who do not have the seal of God on their foreheads. The seal of God on their foreheads means these locusts cannot attack those people. So this goes back to what is the purpose of the seal of God on their forehead? It's protection from this trumpet judgment. Verse 5. And it was given to them so that they do not kill them, these people that do not have the seal of God on their foreheads, but that they be tormented for 5 months. And their torment is like the torment of a scorpion whenever they strike a person. The sting of a scorpion is very painful. It usually doesn't kill an adult, but it can kill a child, a normal scorpion. And these locusts, which are vast in number, doubtless, because locusts are, have that kind of a sting. Verse 6, and in those days people will seek death, and they will certainly not find it. And they will desire to die, and death will flee from them. This speaks of a terrible kind of pain, a pain that is so painful that people just want to die. That is a terrible kind of pain, and they are not granted relief even by death. 5 months here, let's just leave 5 months as literal. That is a terribly long time to endure such a terrible pain. You know, you might think about how long does the sting of a scorpion, a regular scorpion of the earth, last? Oh, how many days does it still hurt? I don't know. But people then knew, the sting of a scorpion lasts so long, you have to just make it through the pain. But 5 months, let's leave that literal. It works. Let's leave it alone. Remember, our principle is to interpret as literally as possible. Well, it can be 5 literal months. That's a long time to have a pain that just leaves you wanting to die. Verse 7, and the appearance of the locusts was like horses equipped for battle, and on their heads were something like gold crowns, and their faces were like the faces of men. Oh, this is very strange. These are not normal locusts. So we can speculate, are they some sort of special creation that God creates to do this? Are they some kind of demon that God uses to cause this pain? I'm sure the speculations abound. Or even, are they some kind of a military weapon of modern warfare that John just says, oh, they're locusts? I don't know how else to describe it. We don't need to know. We don't have, and we don't need to have exact physical, scientific understanding of what this terrible plague is and how we in modern vocabulary would describe these locusts. It's just terrible. And their appearance is terrible. Horses equipped for battle. Remember, in the ancient world, a horse equipped for battle was the most dangerous kind of warfare. If your enemy is on a horse equipped for battle, this is terrifying, unstoppable. You can't stop a horse equipped for battle with bows and arrows, because sometimes horses can be wearing breastplates of protection against these things. So this is terrifying. Their heads had something like gold crowns. What? And their faces were like the faces of men. It's just frightening. So verse 8. And they had hair like the hair of women, and their teeth were like lions' teeth. It's just frightening. Verse 9. And they had breastplates like breastplates of iron, and the sound of their wings was like the noise of many chariots and horses running into battle. This is, again, just plain terrifying. They're like horses. They're protected with breastplates of iron, so they're unstoppable. The sound of their wings was like the noise of many chariots and horses running into battle. Of course, in the modern world, we have all kinds of terrifying sounds. But in the ancient world, chariots and horses running into battle was the most frightening noise that you could hear if it was headed your way. Verse 10, and they have tails like scorpions and stingers, and their tails have the power to harm people for 5 months. This is a repeat and a further explanation. Yes, they have tails like scorpions. Well, we sort of knew that. And stingers, and we knew about the power of their tails, their stingers, to harm people for 5 months. So it's emphasized. There's no escape. It's clarified. It's emphasized. Verse 11, and they have a king over them, the angel of the abyss, whose name in Hebrew is Abaddon, and in Greek he has the name Apollyon. These names mean destruction. Verse 12, the first woe has passed. Look, 2 woes are still coming after these things. So the first woe was that 5th trumpet, and 2 remain. That's the 6th and the 7th trumpet. Verse 13, and the 6th angel blew his trumpet, and I heard a voice from the 4 horns of the golden altar that is before God. This must be in the heavenly temple. The altar has 4, they call them horns. They're 4 projections from the corners. It's known on earthly altars as well. Verse 14, saying to the 6th angel who had the trumpet, release the 4 angels binding the great river Euphrates. Mysterious, but these 4 angels are allowed, they're released. And verse 15, and the 4 angels that were prepared for that hour and for that day and month and year were released, so that they would kill 1/3 of mankind. Well, we don't understand this. This is not clear here. How is it that these 4 angels and their connection with the Euphrates River is related to killing 1/3 of mankind? Just a moment, we will see. So verse 16, and the number of soldiers mounted on horses was 10,000s of 10,000s. I heard their number. Why are we talking about horses? We were just talking about the river Euphrates. This mention of the Euphrates River and these horsemen is a frightening connection, a frightening reference for the people of the Roman Empire, because of the story of one of the most terrible defeats that Rome ever experienced in war. In 53 BC, the Romans experienced a terrible defeat in a place called Carrhae, out in that region. They were lured into the desert, and they were cut down by mounted soldiers with composite bows that could shoot their arrows much farther and with much more deadly effect than the Romans. And the Romans lost thousands and thousands of soldiers in that, and it was a terrible defeat and a terrible shame. The Roman standards, the proud sort of flags of the Roman army, were seized, and it took a lot of negotiations for those standards, those flags, to be finally freed and returned to the Roman army. So this is a terrifying place for the people of the Roman Empire. We know the expression, the Parthian shot. A Parthian shot is a military expression, but it's adopted into modern language. A Parthian shot is a perhaps a verbal blow that's delivered as someone is leaving. Well, the story behind that is that the Parthians, who were beyond the river Euphrates, could gallop away from their enemy and in the saddle turn 180 degrees and shoot with accuracy and kill people that thought they were chasing their enemy away. It turns out they're targeted and killed. So these Parthian soldiers, mounted horsemen, were a frightening memory not too long ago for people in the Roman Empire. And here are these horses, but they're not horses. Verse 17, and this is how I saw the horses in the vision. Those seated on them had breastplates the color of fire, hyacinth, and sulfur. And the heads of the horses were like the heads of lions. And out of their mouths came fire and smoke and sulfur. So these horses are not really horses, but that's the word that John has to use to describe them with these other explanations. Again, it reminds us of the locusts in the previous trumpet. They're not really locusts, but John has to say locusts. These horses in this trumpet judgment are not really horses, but they're more terrifying than horses. And again, are they demons? Are they special creations? Are they metaphor for modern warfare like tanks? Again, we don't have and we don't need specific, clear answers about that. What we know is that this is a terrifying judgment in which a third of mankind dies. Verse 18, from these 3 plagues, a third of mankind was killed from the fire and the smoke and the sulfur that was coming out of their mouths. The 3 seems to be those 3 things, fire and smoke and sulfur. It seems to refer to that coming out of their mouths. A third of mankind. That's a lot of people dying all over the world from these horse-like beings that bring death. Verse 19, for the power of the horses is in their mouths and in their tails, for their tails were like snakes having heads, and with them they harmed people. These aren't regular horses, but they are very deadly beings, and there's a lot of them. And verse 20, and the rest of humanity who were not killed by these plagues did not repent of the deeds of their hands. They would not stop worshiping demons and idols made of gold and silver and bronze and stone and wood, which are not able to see or hear or walk. The expression did not repent, they did not repent, occurs 4 times in the book of Revelation. They did not repent. Those that were not killed by these things, by these plagues, did not repent. And what kind of sins did they need to repent from? Worshipping demons and idols. In the Bible, the worship of idols is associated with the worship of demons. People are not just worshiping a little carving or a little molten image. They are worshiping demons. They do not see or hear or walk. That's a common expression, too, that describes the foolishness of the worship of idols. Verse 21, and they did not repent of their murders or their sorcery or their sexual immorality or their thievery. This comment that they did not repent reminds us of Pharaoh's hardened heart in Exodus. Again, a reference back to this Exodus concept. Idols that cannot see or hear. We might look at Deuteronomy 4:28 or Psalm 115, 5 through 7. Well, what about the original hearers of the book of Revelation? Thyatira, Pergamum, you in these congregations that are committing sexual immorality and that are involved in the worship of idols, are you listening? These are the enemies of God that are being destroyed, that will be destroyed in this coming age, and yet you are involved in these kind of sins? Thyatira and Pergamum, you in the congregation that are doing these things, are you hearing this? You need to repent. Leave these sins. These are the sins of the part of humanity that are going to be destroyed. And you are participating in them? Leave these things. Any readers today of the book of Revelation that are involved in idolatry, that are involved in sexual immorality, leave it. Repent. Go back to those 2 letters, the letter to Pergamum and Thyatira. Read those letters and leave behind those sins, lest you be found to be like these people that will all be killed during the 7-year tribulation. Well, in review, chapter 9 covers the 5th and the 6th trumpets. The 5th trumpet was about a judgment of locusts, which are much more terrible than normal locusts. And the 6th trumpet has soldiers mounted on horses. And we read about the horses, and they are much more frightening than the horses of ancient warfare. The 7th trumpet remains.